Welcome to the show, Amber.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Ambre,
Yeah.
Amber.
My closest friends call me Ambre. But it is Amber, yeah.
Now, what is your sober date, Amber?
I'm coming up on 2 years, so my sober date is November 29th, 2022.
Oh, well, congratulations on
Thank
2 years.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
How
I'm almost there, but I plan on doing all the things I've done, to get me to this point. So I'm pretty confident I'm gonna make it to 2 years.
by the time this comes out, you'll have already hit your 2 years because this will be
Okay,
out in December.
awesome. So
So
cool.
because I'm releasing. I don't know if you saw me post about it. I'm releasing a new episode every day from Thanksgiving Eve to New Year's Day.
I did see that, and that's awesome because I feel like around this time of year, especially when, there's a lot of family involved, whether you have it or not, it can go both ways. When you don't have family, it's a scary thing. When you do, it's a scary thing.
Yeah,
And
relapses happen a lot during the holidays.
yeah, and the holidays, I feel like it's one of those acceptable times, to be drinking. So I
Yeah,
think that's awesome you're doing this.
yep. Thanksgiving, you get where I'm from South Jersey,
Okay.
and it's really popular to get drunk on Thanksgiving Eve.
Oh yeah, I've spent many a Thanksgivings blacked out.
Yep. Yeah, Thanksgiving Eve, Thanksgiving. You have
Yeah,
Christmas Eve. You have Christmas parties, work parties throughout December. People are
right.
throwing parties throughout December.
Yep,
New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. You
right.
know, New Year's Day is not. I have out of 200 episodes, nobody has yet to tell me January 1st
Oh wow.
as a sober date. A lot of people have said January 2nd or January
Right,
3rd, but
right.
nobody has told me January 1st. You
Oh
know what I mean?
wow. I think
So
I may have met one or two at meetings, but yeah, it's not. I don't think it's common. I think it's probably after the new year. After they've probably made the resolution, haven't succeeded, and then they're like, okay, we gotta gotta
get
do
back
something
on
about
track.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So November 29th of 2022. What was
Mhm.
going on November 28th of 2022?
So November 28th of 2022, I was admitted to a psychiatric ward. And I can laugh at that now, but I promise you it was not all that funny when it was happening. I That day in particular is like really just like very paramount in my recovery because I remember it so well. And
Well,
I've struggled.
take me throughout the day. What happened that
Yeah.
day?
So actually, like the week before had been like family, my husband, my kids, everyone knew that they have known for a long time my drinking was a problem, but I was like creating all kinds of chaos. Actually, that Thanksgiving, I blacked out and didn't make it to Thanksgiving dinner. My in laws were there, my family was there, and I was passed out on the couch. But after that, it was like, okay, everyone is aware of how bad it's getting with me. And so that it was a Monday, the 28th was a Monday that year. And I had experience with AA and getting a sponsor and stuff in the past. So I sat down with a calendar and I went online and I looked up meetings near me and I picked a meeting every day that I was going to go to, wrote it down in my calendar. And that morning, I went to a meeting. I didn't share that I was struggling or like what was going on with me or that, I was new and coming back. I just stayed quiet. I left early. That day, I was just wanting to like crawl out of my skin. And I knew like I couldn't drink. Like I had to stop because there were so many things like coming to a head at that point, and it all depended on me not drinking. And I did a few things like to distract myself. I went shopping, I went grocery shopping, went to Walmart, and then it got to the point where I was like, in Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about like that sense of ease and comfort that we get from just taking a drink. And that was that time in my life, that was all I knew for that ease and comfort. I didn't know where to find that anywhere else. And so I gave in and I went to the liquor store, and within like a few hours, like I didn't even get like drunk. I took like I was infamous for having just the little bottles because
I call them airplane
bottles.
bottles.
The airplane bottles. Yeah. I could just shoot them, and then they were easy to dispose of. And, I wouldn't be like pulling out a big bottle. So I bought a few of those, and my kids found out, which led to my husband finding out. That my husband calls my mom. And then before I know it, like it was a like last minute intervention. Like, you got to go away. Like, you can't be in this house. You can't be around your kids. And in my mind, I was like, I've got this. Okay. I have my meetings planned out, blah, 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 blah. And then, before I know it, our county sheriff's department was at my house. And here in Florida, they call it a Baker Act. I think it's called different things other places, but
it's 302 in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I've heard it called different things other places. And so here in Florida, it's a Baker Act, and it's pretty much like if the sheriffs believe that you're a harm to yourself or others, they can take you and put you on a psychiatric hold. And
is it a 72-hour hold too down there?
Yeah, it is 72 hours. And I was only there for one day, but only because I agreed to go directly to rehab. So that day I was handcuffed in front of my, at the time, 14-year-old son, and taken off with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department. And it was at that moment, like, I've struggled with this for a really long time, a majority of my life. And it was at that moment that I truly felt like that helplessness and that hopelessness. Like, I'm in cuffs, I'm in a sheriff's car, I'm on my way to a facility. Like, I cannot just freely leave, And it was really at looking back, a lot of my stories like retrospective, because I don't realize these things as they're happening, if that makes sense. And but yeah, looking back was when I just felt, just that hopelessness and that helplessness.
And you said you're from Florida. Is that where you were born and raised?
Yeah, born and raised here in Florida, Tampa Bay area.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm about 20 minutes 20 minutes east of Tampa.
Tampa, yeah. If you're west of Tampa.
Yeah.
Tampa's a popular city lately with sports.
Yeah. My husband's converted our family to we're Ravens fans now, but
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I grew up with Joe Flacco.
Okay.
The Ravens quarterback for a long time. He was my quarterback in high school. He was my quarterback in high school. So you grew up in Florida. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do. I have one brother. And he struggles with addiction as well.
Is he older or younger?
He's younger than me by about 5 years.
Okay, so you were kind of raised as an only child for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't. He was more of like a he was just like a younger little pest. It wasn't until we got older that we really started to like connect.
It's funny you say that. My brother and I, he's 3 years younger. My sister's 9 years younger. And we all didn't not that we didn't get along. There was such an age gap between my sister and us that we didn't become extremely close with her until she was like 19, 18.
Yeah, right.
And my brother and I, we were close. We fought a lot as kids. It wasn't until we both moved to North Carolina for a year just for work, and we were roommates, and that's where we really got bonded, you know. And now I was the best man at his wedding, we're best friends. Awesome. I got married private in our living room during COVID. So he would have been my best man.
Right.
No one was at my wedding except for this. That's how I wanted it. I didn't
Yeah.
need to be married and all that. I was fine in getting
Yeah.
married.
I feel the same way. You spend
So,
so much money for other people to have a good time on your day.
yep. And my wife had already been married before. She was divorced. So she didn't need the big turnout either. She, we
Right.
just wanted to be married. And with COVID, it was a scary time. So you never
Mhm.
knew what could happen on a given day. So we wanted to make sure we
Right.
were legally married in case anything
Right.
happened to us.
Oh, wow.
So you grew up in Florida, the
Mhm.
oldest of two.
Mhm.
And when did you discover alcohol? How old were you?
Um, one of my first experiences with alcohol, um, you hear a lot about, I've heard a lot of people that, they're able to drink for normally for a little while, or maybe there's like some, a little bit of abnormal drinking, but then it doesn't progress until years and years later. And one of my first experiences with drinking, I was 15 years old, and some friends and I, we were going to skip school. We went back to my house, and it was supposed to be just like a fun day, swimming in the pool and, skipping school with your friends. And we got into my parents' liquor, and I actually ended up in the emergency room. And I don't remember any of this, but my friends told me afterwards that I drank so much that like my face started turning blue. My eyes were rolling in the back of my head. I was like foaming at the mouth. And, I'm with a bunch of other 15-year-olds. So they're freaking out. They actually left me on a park picnic table and called 911. And so I was taken to the emergency room, and I found out that I had a blood alcohol level of 0.42. So fortunately, like they had the sense enough to call an ambulance, because I probably would have died. But yeah, pretty severe alcohol poisoning.
I was 16 when I had alcohol poisoning.
Mm.
And my friends, we were in the woods drinking, and I drank a bottle of Bacardi in 10 minutes.
Oh.
And it was one of those things. I showed up to the party late, and I was trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
I drank, the whole bottle right away. And, back in the woods where I grew up in Jersey, it was a lot of bikers that would go back there and like do ramps and shit like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was a lot of like plywood, and
Oh yeah.
they rolled me on a piece of plywood, called an ambulance, and then carried me out from the woods and onto the street. And then when they heard sirens, they let go of the and I don't remember any of this, but they let go,
Right.
and I fell on my head.
Oh.
And this was the night before Easter. This was Easter Eve. And the next thing I remember is waking up on my couch in the living room in a hospital robe.
Oh wow.
My dad brought my little brother to the hospital with him to like kind of scare my brother straight into like, this is where you'll be
Yeah.
drinking, because I
Yeah.
had my first drink at 11.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been drinking for 5 years at that point. And
Right.
it was mostly a weekend drinker. I would, during the week I got bullied a lot. So if
Mm.
I had gotten bullied that day, I would steal liquor from my parents and drink it in my room.
Right.
My parents weren't alcoholics at all, but
Mm-hmm.
they knew how to throw a party. So
Yeah.
there was always like leftover liquor, and they would just put it into the basement for the next party.
Right.
I would sneak down and drink it. And my first drink actually was Captain Morgan.
Oh
I made,
wow.
made a Captain and Coke when I was 11 and watched The Outsiders, thinking I was.
Right.
Um, how old are you, Amber?
I'm 39. I'll be
Okay.
40 in March.
So we're basically the same age. I'm 38.
Oh,
So
okay.
we grew up around the same time in the
Yeah.
80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
And you were 15 when you first had alcohol poisoning. And I
Yeah.
know when I got alcohol poisoning, it did not stop me from drinking. I
Yeah.
went out the next weekend and did it again. How long again after your alcohol poisoning did you drink again?
So after, so I was admitted to the hospital. My parents found out I was there. Once I was able to be released, they actually checked me into a rehab. at 15. So I was there for 30 days. And that's when I was first introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, because in that program, it was actually like half of it was like an adult program, but they also had a program for adolescents. I was the only like adolescent there for drugs or alcohol. So I do remember like going to these meetings and stuff, but none of it sunk in. I think I was too young, and I just had to go through so much more to realize like, maybe this is a problem.
Yeah, there's now young people's meetings.
Yeah.
When I lived in Los Angeles, there was a lot of meetings for like, under 28 years old or under 25 years old.
Right.
And it's like YPAA, Young People AA.
Yeah. Yep. We've got that here too.
Okay, yeah. So it's in the more populated areas. Where I live in the middle of nowhere, you just have regular AA.
Yeah.
We don't even have NA where I live.
Oh, wow.
Like the closest NA meeting's about 45 minutes to an hour away. And
yeah, that's one thing that we're really fortunate in this area, because there's actually every week there's 638 meetings just in the county that I live in. So in that sense, we're like very fortunate, as recovering people.
Florida is a big recovery area. When I first joined recovery 6 years ago, my mom was like, why don't you go to Florida? And I was like, everyone goes to Florida. I was like, I want to go to Los Angeles. Nobody I know is out there. I can completely start over and be a new JD. And that's where I want to start my process, is in Los Angeles. So that's where I went. I flew out there, knew nobody, started over, because they say when you get into recovery, you start off where you left off before you started drinking and using.
Right.
So I was like an angsty teenager.
Yeah.
When I walked into the program of recovery, and I did AA, and I did NA, and I did CA, which CA does the exact same steps as AA.
Right.
They use the big book in CA.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they use the big book. NA has the basic text,
right,
which is very similar to the big book. I'm in NA today. I do NA and I do GA on the weekends because I'm also a compulsive gambler.
Yeah, I saw that online.
Yeah,
that you posted that. I think I also like drugs are a huge part of my story as well. Just like personal preference, I just like chose AA. But I feel like the steps and the principles can really, you can use it towards anything in your life, not even, an addiction. So I think it's really amazing in that way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because in my opinion, the most important part of step one is not admitting you have a problem. The most important part to me is my life became unmanageable.
Yeah, same.
That's what really sticks with me throughout the years that I've, been introduced to recovery, is my life. Excuse me. My life, it became unmanageable when I was gambling every day.
Yeah.
And robbing Peter to pay Paul, borrowing money, scheming for money, ways and means and ends to find more.
Right.
And it started out, on a weekly basis on football. And then once football ended, I still had that itch. And then baseball's on 7 days a week. So next thing I know, I'm gambling every day. And it got out of hand, like it does. So,
and now it's so accessible too. I know there's like apps now. You can do it from right from your phone, sitting on the toilet or something.
I don't even need a bookie.
Right. Yeah.
Like before, I needed a bookie that I knew that I could place bets through. And nowadays it's all done on the phone. So you're 15, you go to rehab for 30 days and you get out. And do you stick with meetings when you get out of rehab, or how long before you drank again?
A lot of that part of my life is very like foggy. But I know that something continued as far as like my behavior, and there was obviously like some drinking and using as well, because I ended up in rehab again just before my 16th birthday.
What were you using?
When I was younger, it was really anything. Like, looking back, I never had a fear of really anything. I don't think nothing like really scared me. So if someone gave me like a random pill and said it's going to do this, I wouldn't think twice about taking it. But during that part of my life, like ecstasy was really big here in Florida. So there was like some ecstasy use, like weed, really just like experimenting with everything.
And that was when you were 15 or younger?
Yeah, about 15 was when it all started.
Yeah, I was introduced to muscle relaxers when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed them. Like somas, like they would put me on. Yes. And I started smoking weed when I was 13.
Yeah, same with weed, 13.
Yeah, and I started smoking cigarettes at 13.
Yeah.
Is where that cough just came from. Is 25 years of smoking cigarettes.
That I'm still yet to give up, but I'm a vapor now.
No, my wife just quit vaping. She had been smoking since she was a teenager, and she's 40, and she used a patch, and that helped her quit.
Yeah,
and I told
hard,
her,
man.
I told her by the time I'm 40, I'll quit too.
Yeah.
So I got 2 years to scale myself down and quit. Yeah, I it's one of those things that I learned how to inhale with the Black and Mild.
Oh yeah, I remember Black and Milds. You don't see those around too much anymore.
My sponsor smokes them actually. And he lives in the same apartment building as me. So I'll smoke a cigarette or two while he's smoking a Black and Mild, and we just shoot the shit for 10 minutes.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
So you get into drugs at an earlier age than drinking, basically.
Yeah.
And in Florida, did you get into the pill mills at all?
I don't know what I think I don't know if I have like an actual allergy to pain pills but there's something about opiates. It doesn't matter like what I take or how much I take. Like, it is just not pleasant for me. Like, I am so sick. I can't move. I'm like sweating, then I'm cold, then I'm throwing up. Like, it's just an awful experience. And I really do look at that as a blessing today, because I have so many friends, that, went from pills to heroin, and then, now are dead because they got fentanyl.
Yeah.
And,
it's one into the other. Is xylazine down there too, Trank?
I don't think I've heard of that.
Okay, it's big around Philly, and it's starting to make its way south and west, and it's horse tranquilizer.
Oh, okay.
And people are shooting it with their heroin.
Oh, wow.
Mixing it with fentanyl.
So like ketamine?
No, stronger.
Oh, okay. Wow.
It's stronger. It's literally horse tranquilizer.
Oh God, yeah.
And it's crazy. People are like walking dead in Philly.
Yeah.
I've never heard of Kensington, but Kensington is the biggest open air drug market in the country, and people are walking around like zombies because of trank and fentanyl. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. Well, that's what's scary about, like, I have kids now. My oldest are 18 and 16, and I'm like, I understand like kids experiment and stuff, but the drugs aren't like they were back in the day. Like, you can get weed laced with fentanyl now. Like, it's not like it used to be. So it's really scary as a mom.
Yeah. And our kid's 10, and we're happy that, we haven't had a drink since February 29th of 2020. We woke up hungover and decided to quit drinking.
That's awesome.
And thank you. So coming up on 5 years, in February.
Yep.
And we're lucky that our son was 5, so he never really had to see us drunk and over. We smoked weed for a while. My wife just quit smoking weed about a month ago. October 1st is her clean date from smoking weed, and April 1st is my clean date from smoking weed.
Nice.
So he gets to grow up in an apartment. Well, we don't have a house, so we have an apartment. But he gets to grow up in an atmosphere of sobriety.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So you're a teenager. You're experimenting. You're drinking. When you turn 21, does your drinking progress at all?
So this is also like one thing that I feel like kept me in denial for so long was that, you know, I had these experiences at 15, and then at 20, I actually had my first daughter. And I was able to go periods of time where I wasn't drinking or doing anything. And again, like the past is a little cloudy for me, but I don't remember like that feeling I got towards the end where like, oh, I got to have a drink or I need something, you know? So there were like some periods of time where I wasn't using anything, I wasn't drinking. But I will say like I wasn't drinking a lot, but the times that I would drink, I was like going overboard. It would be like I couldn't control it. And I was actually just talking to someone this morning, and you know, from what I've heard with like normies is, you know, they have a few drinks and then like, you know, their mind tells them, or there's something within them that is like, oh, I'm feeling a little buzzed, I should get some water, or, you know, I'm feeling a little buzzed, maybe I'm going to stop. I've never had that voice. I don't know what that feels like to have, you know, something within me tell me to stop or slow down.
That's funny you say that, because when on my 13th month, you know, I found recovery 6 years ago on April 25th, 2018. That's the last time I did opiates. And I had quit drinking in California. Like I said, I went out to LA, and I decided, okay, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to do AA. I'm not sure if I'm really an alcoholic, but I'm definitely a pill addict.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to dive into this program, and I want to stop, you know, doing perks and oxy. So I'm going to do this program and do what it takes and take suggestions for the first year. And then on my 13th month anniversary, I was like, I'm ready to drink again.
Yeah.
And I did everything that you can expect. I stopped talking to my sponsor before I made this decision. I stopped having connection to my higher power. I stopped going to meetings regularly. And all three of those things happened in my last couple months of my first year. So by May 25th of 2019, I picked up a drink again.
Yeah.
And I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't an alcoholic, because you know how alcoholics, you have to drink every last drop.
Oh, yeah.
So I drank 4. I got a 6-pack of Twisted Tea, and I drank 4, and then I poured the other 2 out. And I said to myself, an alcoholic couldn't be pouring out drinks, so I'm not.
Right.
And I did pretty good for a while, and then I woke up on February 29th, you know, Leap Day, and I realized I drank a bottle of Jack Daniels the night before, and I had a horrible hangover. And I said to my wife, like, hey, I either need a drink or we need to quit drinking. And you know, she's an alcoholic, a garden variety alcoholic, you know, and she was like, well, I'll quit drinking with you. And I said, okay, this is the perfect sober date. We can only celebrate once every 4 years. And, you know, nobody's going to have this sober date of Leap Day. I was like,
right.
You know, and I still have yet to meet anybody else with the same
That's pretty cool.
Sober date. And so we quit on Leap Day, and we just celebrated 4 years, or we're going to have 5 years at the end of February.
Yep.
And it's one of those things like, and then COVID shut down everything 2 weeks later.
Right. What a wonderful time to get sober, when you need people the most.
And you couldn't go to meetings. And
right.
That's all I knew was meetings. And Zoom meetings weren't really accessible early on.
Right.
It became more prevalent a few months into it when Zoom got bigger. But Zoom wasn't around March or April.
Yeah.
So like we got through that, and then we opened our own meeting center in 2021 where we held AA, NA.
Nice.
We held meetings for mental health. We held meetings for LGBTQ.
Mhm.
Young people meetings, and it was just a whole bunch of meetings, yoga
Right.
and meditation room. And this is where that podcast came out of.
That's really cool.
That's why it's called MJ's Progress Not Perfection, because it's Mikey and JD, and that was
Oh, cool. Okay.
in the meeting center. And that's why it's not JD's Progress Not Perfection.
Okay.
And
Very
I
cool.
started this as a way to try to like make money to keep us, afloat, because we were a nonprofit.
Right.
We weren't getting funding. We weren't
Yeah.
getting donations, and
Wow.
we were self-funding it, and we couldn't afford to keep it going anymore, and we had to let it go.
Right. Oh, wow.
But I kept doing the podcast, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I found myself connecting with people all over the world.
Mhm.
And I'm so public about my recovery because, there was one night early on, and I was really obsessed with my numbers, like, and making sure people were viewing it. And I
Yeah.
was obsessed with it. And I would get frustrated when they didn't get enough views. And one night I had a DM from a girl that said, "I'm from the UK. I just watched 8 episodes and I decided to go to detox tomorrow."
Oh,
And
wow.
that kept me going up until this day.
Right.
If
Right.
it reaches one person, it reaches one person.
Right. Yeah, you never know, you
And
know?
last Friday, I had somebody reach out and they were like, "Hey, I looked up Gamblers Anonymous and I found your post. What
Mhm.
what meetings do you go to? My husband really needs to get to a meeting." And
Wow.
I sent a screenshot of the 2 meetings I go to on the weekends, and
Yeah.
he's been there the last 2 weekends.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
So, stuff like that keeps me going
Right.
with my recovery, and
Right.
being so open about it and not staying anonymous. There's a bunch of old timers that are like, "You're breaking your anonymity." And, it's like, you don't understand. People are dying left and right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's important for me to put myself out there so that I have friends that are still in active addiction.
Mhm.
And I want them to feel comfortable coming to me when they're ready to change their lives.
Right. Right. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm pretty vocal about my recovery as well. I didn't care who knew I was using and drinking, so I don't
yeah.
the more people that know I'm recovered, it's a wonderful thing to spread.
So what were you mostly using then? Was it like Coke, or was it uppers or downers?
So towards the last like few years of my using, I was more of like I'm a naturally like sleepy, calm person, so I gravitated towards stimulants. So there was a long period of like using Coke, that went to smoking crack. And then, to be quite honest, like I loved doing it. I love the feeling that it brought, and like the whole ritual about it, the things, the things that I did, like getting it ready, like I don't know, it's like this weird addict part of me that liked that. But the consequences that come along with it, like
No, yeah.
when you got to figure out like, okay, how am I going to feed my family? Cause I just spent, a whole 2 weeks paycheck in one night. So that, I found real quickly that wasn't sustainable. So then I went to,
We romanticize our using.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, I don't know if you have Snapchat, but I'll see old snaps from
Yeah.
myself 6-7 years ago, where it's me Snapchatting a bunch of pills, or
Mm,
it's me Snapchatting a video of me doing a big line of pills.
right.
And it was like I would send them to people, and I thought they were so impressive that I saved them. You know what I mean? In
Right.
order to see myself doing it again. And,
Yeah.
they pop up in my memories, and I'm like, holy shit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I would thought was cool. And this is
Yeah.
what
The
I was showing.
insanity.
And, I had a pill crusher, and I put the pills in, and I would do the thing, and I got it
Yeah.
from PBS. When I
Yeah.
got arrested, they told me the pill crusher was paraphernalia.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was just like, it's not for me.
It never is. It's not mine.
It's for my dog's medicine.
Yeah.
And I had a handful of straws in my center console,
Yeah.
and because I would take a straw from like McDonald's because they were fatter straws.
Yeah.
I would bend it in half, and I would drop the pills inside, chew them,
Oh yeah.
and then they would become all powder, and then
Right.
do a big line like that while I was driving my car because
Yeah.
it was hard to break up a pill and then snort it if I was
Be
driving.
driving. Yeah.
Were you an IV user of Coke, or were you a snorter?
I did a little bit of everything. I was snorting it, and then had a friend that would shoot it, and that never like interested me. So I was like, I'm fine snorting it. You can do your thing. Like, I don't care, And they would get mad at me because I was like wasting it by snorting it. So ultimately like ended up shooting it. And I wasn't very good at doing that by myself though. and then found crack, and I was like, why did I ever do coke?
Yeah, because now you can smoke it and get an
Yeah,
immediate high and
right.
last longer. Because crack
Yeah.
lasts longer than Coke, I've heard.
It it does, but it does something with your brain where it's like you like literally just can't stop smoking it,
Yeah,
like when I would be doing coke, like I'd be like, okay,
yeah,
I'll do it in like 10 minutes or whatever. But it wasn't that easy with crack. And I was like still trying to work and stuff while doing that, like still trying to like manage my life. And then that turned to manipulating a psychiatrist to give me Adderall, because I got very similar feelings, that like up, motivated, ready to go, get shit done, with Adderall. And, then I wasn't having to like drive to some sketchy place to get it. My insurance covered the prescription cost. And I think it also like helped me to rationalize like, oh, a doctor gave this to me.
yeah. I manipulated my psychiatrist to give me Ativan.
Oh yeah.
My clean date is April 1st of 24 because I relapsed with, I haven't bought street drugs since, April 24, 2018 was the last time I bought drugs on the street. I was getting my weed through a dispensary, and I got my Ativan through a psychiatrist, and then I abused that. I manipulated him into giving me Valium. Abused that. I realized you could snort Valium, so I started snorting my Valium.
Yeah.
And just, it was just a never ending cycle until my wife was like, you're missing a bunch of pills. Called me out on it, and she's just like, you're not sober anymore.
Yeah.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's when I got back into the rooms again. I took a month off of work through FMLA and short-term disability. And I spent that entire month going to meetings and working on myself again and detoxing.
Right.
Coming off of benzos daily for a year. It's not a fun detox.
No.
A lot of sleepless nights and cold sweats, and it's not
Awful.
something I want to do again.
Yeah.
And you enjoyed crack the most, do you think?
I think so. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not the first person to tell me that.
I know. And people see me and they're like, there's no way you ever did that. But, it's, and then that just goes to show like addiction doesn't discriminate, and, I really liked it. And it's easy for me to be like, oh, well, I liked the feeling it gave me and this and that. But it's been a while since I felt that like coming down feeling from it, because that was not fun. That like brought me to like wanting to kill myself. That was horrible. Then I've got no money. Like every feel good molecule in my body is depleted. And, I've been up for days. I haven't eaten. And, that such an awful feeling, but it's wild with addiction because like, that's never enough to stop me,
One is too many and 1,000's never enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what was your husband saying throughout these years?
So my husband is in recovery as well. And we've been married for 4 years now. So when we got together, he had been sober for like a year and a half. I was fake sober. I was pretending to be sober. And I was able to only keep that facade up for so long. And so he stuck with me through like a lot of like struggles with my addiction. And then it got to the point where like he wasn't working on himself, and then we started using together. And that kind of led up to 2 years ago when like shit really hit the fan.
Yeah.
So he's been he got sober like a month after I did originally. But then he had a relapse in March. So he's got like a little over 6 months now.
Well, that's good. You can support each other, because
Yeah.
if he was a normie, it's hard for them sometimes to understand the insanity that your brain goes through,
Right.
and how, like, you're putting yourself into shitty situations, or situations that you shouldn't be finding yourself in, like
Yeah.
going to the sketchy part of town, and picking up some crack and smoking it. Like you said, people were like, "You smoked crack, really? You?"
Yeah.
And they, like you said, it doesn't discriminate when
Right.
it comes to how often you're using and what you're doing. Were you able to maintain a full-time job while you're going through your addiction?
I did. And like during the times that I've like looking back, I've noticed like the times, and this I think kept me in denial about my drug use. It was like easy for me to admit I was an alcoholic because I could see, and everyone could see, the destruction that happened when I would drink. But a lot of my using, nobody ever knew about it. It was like easy for me to like hide it. Like I always somehow found a way to make things work. And so I, like, in my mind, the way I looked at it was like I couldn't see where the drugs were causing consequences. So it was, I don't know, like easy to tell myself like, okay, alcohol is a problem, but through therapy and treatment, like I found like I'm 100% a drug addict as well.
Yeah. I'm glad that treatment gave you that kind of insight,
Yeah.
And, I didn't, like I said, I didn't think I was an alcoholic, and I knew I was a drug addict. I knew I was a drug addict since I was 23 years old.
Yeah.
And yeah, that didn't stop me until I was 32. And that's when, I decided to, go into a treatment for the first time. And I'm still a one-time treatment person, even though I
Yeah.
had a relapse. I knew when I had my relapse what to do, and it was get back into AA. And
Right.
I only lasted about 2 months into AA before I switched to NA. Just because my problem wasn't alcohol. I wasn't in AA again because of alcohol.
Right.
I am an alcoholic, but what I needed to vent about was weed and benzos.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that in AA. The old timers give you looks,
I
they want
know.
to find your discussion about how it pertains to alcohol, as it says in literature.
Right.
So I found a good Zoom meeting that I attend, Monday through Friday at noon. And that's my NA meeting that I do, because I can talk about alcohol.
Right.
Because in their literature it says alcohol is a drug.
Everything's a drug. Yeah. Right.
So I can discuss my struggles, whether it's with alcohol or whether it's with drugs.
Right.
So I feel more open and authentic. I should say the word is authentic. I can be myself.
No, I totally get that. And I have mixed feelings personally about it, just because like it does talk about drugs in the big book. And it does talk about how, I don't think in the preamble we have now, but there is a version of the preamble from like, I don't know, maybe the 40s, where it talks about like we abstain from drugs and alcohol, you know, we abstain from all of it. And like AA is where all of that stuff is stemmed from. So it's like, what's the big deal? You know, we're kind of all in this together.
Yeah.
But
Jimmy K started in AA before he founded NA in 1953.
yeah.
You know, and then he wrote the basic text, which is like the big book's brother. You know, the basic, and
Yeah. I've got a copy.
they're both blue books.
Right.
So, and they both have the same message. So
Yeah.
I read the big book and I'm reading the basic text.
Yeah. And
I'm going good.
I can see how I can see how, like, with being a drug addict, like you do need something a little more where you're able to talk about that stuff, because I feel like with alcohol, it's so like socially acceptable, you know, like I can go to the liquor store at 9 o'clock in the morning and nobody bats an eye. You know, you can't just go to the convenience store and buy crack. You know, you
Yeah.
can't just stop into the grocery store and find heroin. You know, it really does almost like change your personality a little bit more, because a lot of times you're having to do like sketchy things, you know, whether you're like stealing or, you know, it just leads to other things that like change you.
Yeah.
Not a lot of like just alcoholics don't understand.
Yeah. There's a lot of women I had on the show that, you know, were sex trafficked.
Yeah.
And, you know, because of addiction and trying to, you know, make money in order to, you know, pay for more to their drug of choice.
Right.
And, you know, in AA, it's harder for some of the old timers to grasp that concept because they can go and just buy liquor. It's in the ads, it's on
Right.
ads everywhere. You know, I
Right.
talk about alcohol every day. So my
Mhm.
phone shows me ads for alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's what I learned to do is there's like three dots in the corner of a post. And
Mhm.
every time I see an ad, I hit the three dots and I say, I don't like this ad.
Yeah, right.
I see less and less ads now. But, you know, for a while, I was getting bombarded with ads for liquor and beer.
Right.
And it's, you know, there's even a baseball team, the Brewers, they're based on, you know, Milwaukee's beer.
Yeah, right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And but yeah, like you said, you can't just go into 7-Eleven and buy some crack.
Right.
Um
And it would be nice if like these old timers, like as far as like having an open mind, you know, it's like, yeah, you didn't have to sell your body to buy alcohol, but if you know that's what it came down to, would you, you know, if you weren't able to just get it from the liquor store, or if you weren't able to, you know. So I think people just don't think about that kind of stuff. I personally don't judge. I feel like, you know, if you struggle with addiction, like we have that common bond, you know. And
yeah, I struggled because, you know, I was getting prescribed this medication from my doctor.
mhm.
So an alcoholic doesn't understand that I can pay $1 copay and be high for weeks.
Mhm.
You know, just $1 and I'll be high for weeks.
Right.
You can't spend $1 and be drunk for 2 weeks.
Right. Now.
So it's hard for them to grasp the concept of it's not even about money, it's about escapism.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
for
anything to
sure.
get me outside of my head.
Mhm.
And because I've dealt with a lot of grief. I had a fiance that killed herself,
Mm.
and I didn't know how to process that. I just
Yeah.
knew to drink and to use. You know, I was mixing coke with alcohol,
Mhm.
and I felt like those two had a great marriage together.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure you know it all about it too,
Yeah.
because when you're drinking and do a line of coke, you feel like you're King Kong.
Yeah, just
And
evens it out.
you can conquer the world.
Right.
And I've heard there's three things I've never done. It's heroin, crack, and meth.
Mhm.
But I've heard when you smoke crack, you feel like you're invisible.
Yeah.
Like, not invisible,
And
invincible.
yeah, right. It's crazy. And you know, it's a reminder too of why like I can't I can't put anything in my body. Once I put something in my body that's like going to alter my mood or my mind, it lets down my defense. And there was a time when, like, if I thought about someone smoking crack, I'm thinking about like a bum, down in Skid Row. I didn't think of like, suburban mom with, kids at home and a full-time job. But like, that's where putting something in my body can potentially lead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see you got 2 years now.
Thank
And,
you.
I think you're doing all the right things. I think it's awesome that you're public about your recovery because
Mhm.
not everybody is. A lot of
Yeah.
people want to stay anonymous and they don't want people to know they're even in meetings for alcohol.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's what's the word? It's refreshing
Yeah.
to see other people whenever they're living their recovery so loudly. And there's a guy who's been on my show a couple times. He's a public speaker. He does events where he speaks about addiction.
Hmm.
And he always says, I recover out loud for those that are dying in silence.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That was one of the things that really helped me like grasp sobriety. Like, I did get a lot of help from the program, but if it weren't for like these other women that have showed me the way, and men, being like just so completely honest and vulnerable, about the things that were going on with them, I would never know that other people are struggling with that. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Yep.
Yeah, like, for instance, like, being a mom, and, there were times like my kids would be asleep and I thought it was totally okay to leave them home. They're sleeping, they're fine, leave and go pick up drugs or go to the liquor store. And those things were like very shameful for me to talk about. And but by keeping that inside, I'm just keeping myself sick. And so when I heard other women sharing about having those experiences as a mother and being able to relate to that, it's huge.
I did a special episode like 2 years ago. I cut together a bunch of old episodes, and it was about sexual abuse, and it was called "Our Secrets Keep Us Sick."
Mm-hmm.
And because I truly believe the more you hold something in and not let it out, that's when it starts eating away at you. And trying
Mm-hmm.
to hold that in, you're just going to make yourself sick over it. And that kind of shit causes cancer,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
Literally. Yeah. I mean, like, anxiety, you keep that inside, like you're going to get an ulcer. Like, it really does manifest as like these physical things.
Yep. Well, I'm so happy you are where you are right now, Amber. I
Thank
think you're
you.
doing great.
Yeah.
I think you have a good head on your shoulders right now, and you're working your recovery. You're
Yeah.
not loud about it. You're not quiet. You're being an example to your teenage kids.
Yeah.
And I think that the more, you let them know that it's okay to mess up and you can get back on your feet, that they're going to learn some lessons, if
Yeah,
that
for
makes
sure.
sense.
Yeah. If they ever do struggle, they know where to go and they don't have
Yeah.
to leave their home for it.
They're not going to be judged,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they have a stepdad and a mom that both are going to be understanding and sympathetic and not
Absolutely.
just like kick them out of the house. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
thank you again
Um,
for sitting down.
there
Yeah.
were just a couple other things I wanted
Yeah.
to mention
Yeah.
that,
Of course. Take your time,
like,
guys.
usually that, like, I can't talk about like in meetings, but are very, very, like, I don't feel like without doing these things I would have been able to recover. And one of them was addressing my mental health. So, and there's a big stigma around mental health stuff too, I feel. I had this mentality of, oh, I'm not going to take when they wanted to prescribe me stuff for depression. Oh, I'm not going to be dependent on a pill for the rest of my life, but here I am, like, smoking crack on the weekends. Not didn't make sense. I don't understand why, but I was very against like doing anything for my mental health. So this time around, again, it's nothing mood or mind altering, but there's no amount of like AA or recovery that's going to help like the chemical imbalance I have in my brain, you know?
I'm bipolar. I totally
Okay. Yeah. So you get it. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, you can go to all the meetings in the world. You can work all the steps and, you know, do all that stuff, but it's not going to help our mental state.
And my fiance that committed suicide, she was bipolar schizophrenic.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
and this was 9 years ago when mental health wasn't really talked about as openly as it is today.
Right.
I feel like the stigma, luckily, is the needle is moving in the way of being less stigmatized and more open about it.
For
And
sure.
I talk about it almost in every episode because I want people to know it's okay to get some help. It's
Yeah.
okay to get therapy. It's okay to have
Yeah.
a psychiatrist and have to be on some mood altering meds.
Right.
You know, it's not just a cut and dry just because you're on Lamictal,
Yeah.
that your life's over and
Right.
you need lithium,
Yeah.
or your life's over. Like I always say, Tony Soprano needed psychiatry.
Yeah.
you know, and he needed Prozac.
Right.
He was this big bad mafia boss, and
Yeah.
I feel like there's not a lot of men, especially, that feel open to talking about their past and they want to hold it in.
Mm-hmm.
So I always welcome men on the show that are being open and honest about their past and there's been some that like they have like 40 years sober. And, sometimes I feel like they have a different perspective on things because most of their life they've been sober. And, I get more sometimes from someone like you who has 2 years because you've lived an adult life with children, and now you've seen both sides of the coin.
Right.
So,
yeah. So addressing mental health and like that included therapy. Another thing that I did that I don't think I'd still be sober if I didn't address was like coexisting disorders. So I also have an eating disorder, and it wasn't until like addressing that with like a medical professional that their eating disorders are like statistically there's a lot of alcoholic women who have eating disorders, or
there's
like some sort of like yeah. So I think that's like super important to talk about as well, because I was living with an eating disorder for years, and again, it goes back to like that vulnerability. I thought it was weird. These are weird thoughts. Like, this isn't normal. I'm not going to tell anyone about it.
Were you in high school when you first had an eating disability?
So it actually started like much younger than that. I think because I had always had it, it just became like this part of me. But I remember like thoughts, like eating disorder thoughts, like long before I ever drank or used. And I do feel like some of the behaviors I had towards food were very similar with the behaviors I had towards drugs and alcohol. Like, for instance, being like a really young kid, and I have memories of like waking up in the middle of the night and like going into the snack cabinet and like getting a bunch of like little snack cakes, eating them all as quickly as I could, and then I would take the wrappers and like put them in the bottom of the trash so that nobody would be able to see it, and then go to bed. And then I would have like these feelings of like guilt and shame because I don't, I feel ashamed that I did this, but then also that like secretive part where I had to like put it underneath the trash so that nobody would find it,
I've done that. I've definitely done that because like I'm a bigger guy and I was bullied for my size when I was younger. And, I felt like I needed to hide if I was eating something.
Yeah.
And so I totally can relate to that on the other side of the eating problem. And I felt like at our age in the 90s, especially, it was almost acceptable to have an eating disorder.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I love the show Friends.
Yeah.
But they did horrible things for body imaging, for women with body imaging, because everyone was striving to be as skinny as Jennifer Aniston or, Courtney Cox.
Right.
And, it was almost like they made fun of her character. Did you ever watch Friends?
Yeah.
So they made fun of Monica for being fat in high school and poked fun of her. So, like, as much as I love Friends, I do have some issues with Friends.
Yeah.
When it comes down to the way that they handled things. And this was the 90s.
Right.
It was okay to do that kind of stuff in the 90s. I don't think that would fly.
Right. Yeah.
On TV.
And now that, we have like social media and like all the filters and, all these procedures and things you can have done. And so, that was another thing that really helped. It was just like explained to me that like, what I noticed is like, I was able to see a pattern of like when I was using a lot more, the like eating disorder symptoms were like very low, but then the periods of time where I'm not drinking as much or something, they're like really high. And I think it also maybe like played a part in, why I was into stimulants too, because it suppressed my appetite for so long. I mean, I would literally go like weeks without eating. And so it just really like messed with my mind as far as like body image and especially where, like I said, statistically, a lot of alcoholic women specifically struggle with that. I think it's really important to talk about those things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And you're not the first person that's talked about an eating disorder and a mixture of stimulants. You're definitely not alone. And you're definitely not, alone on this show either. And it's a shame, but it's really the truth. And I think that a lot of therapy does help.
Yeah, for sure.
I do therapy. I have a psychiatrist I see once a month.
Mm-hmm.
Or every 3 weeks. And I have a therapist I see every other week.
Yep.
And then every other week in between that, my wife and I do marriage counseling for codependency.
Awesome. Yeah.
So it's not like we were having problems. It's just that we were codependent.
Right. Relatable.
So, and we definitely enabled each other when it came to drinking, when it came to smoking weed. Mm-hmm. So we started that about 2 months ago, and it's been going great. We've been doing it every other Wednesday, and then in between that, every other Wednesday, because they can only bill my insurance once a week.
Oh, right.
So I do therapy every other week, and then I do that every other week.
Yep.
And my wife's in therapy, and our son is in therapy.
I think everyone should go to therapy, whether you think you have issues or not. Like, I really think just like being able to process your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts with another person, there's like a power in that.
And after my dad died last summer, that's when our kid was like talking about death all the time. And, I was in no position to talk about death. He's my stepkid. Yeah. I was in no position to talk death because I was grieving. And I was abusing marijuana, and I was abusing benzos. So I wasn't in the right mindset, and neither was my wife. So we were both like, let's get him into therapy now.
Yeah, right.
And he gets bullied sometimes in school because he loves Super Mario so much, and he's obsessed with video games. He doesn't play sports. So he's gotten made fun of, and it's a way for him to have an outlet. Every Monday at 4:00, come home from school, hop on therapy for an hour, and he loves his therapist.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I find I couldn't agree more about therapy. I think that everybody should begin it, and how helpful it is, and how much you can learn about yourself and your past.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So absolutely. That's awesome to hear, though, that you're in therapy too, because there's some stuff that you just can't do in AA.
Right.
Your therapist learn.
Right. And I do have a sponsor in AA, and there's been times where she's been like, that's above my pay grade. You got to talk to your therapist about that, which I appreciate, because it says in the book, like, we're not therapists, we're not doctors, they're there to take us through the steps. And a lot of times, like, sponsors become our friends, and we create these like close connections, but fortunately she's got some wisdom and enough to tell me like, okay, that you got to talk to a professional about that one. But same thing, I have a psychiatrist, I have a therapist, I have a sponsor, and they all know about each other. Like
Yeah.
my therapist knows I have a sponsor and a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
psychiatrist knows I have a sponsor and a therapist. So, kind of, got all my bases covered.
Yeah, I got two sponsors. I have an AA sponsor and an NA sponsor.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and
Well, and when
I
when you were
see my
talking when
good.
you were talking about all the different programs that they had, when I was in treatment, they did, or rehab, they did recommend that I do, they have like, I, I think it's Eating Disorders Anonymous, and then they also have like Overeaters Anonymous, and they suggested I start that. But at the time, like, I did try it a couple times. But that was when I was like newly sober. Like, I'd just gotten out of treatment. I was like doing outpatient program. Like, I was going to meetings. I was meeting with my sponsor, and my sponsor was like, well, let's focus on, like, let's focus on getting you through these steps, and then, see about working another program. And I did find that through working the steps of AA, I've it helped resolve a lot of those other like eating disorder symptoms that I was dealing with.
Good.
Yeah, and then now I have like a network of people through AA that like I can be honest about those thoughts with. I can talk to them about those things.
Yeah, and a therapist and a psychiatrist.
Exactly.
You know, there's
Exactly.
a bunch of people that maybe you don't feel comfortable talking to this person. And it took me a while to get comfortable talking to my psychiatrist because he's a guy.
Yeah.
And I have a much easier time opening up to women than I do other men.
Right.
And, but, he's like our age. So, it was a lot easier to open up to him over time.
Sure.
And then to the point where I was manipulating him,
Mm,
and now I don't do that. Now,
right.
I'm very honest about
Right.
where I'm at, because in the past I would lie to get benzos.
Yep.
And but he's been really good though. Like, when my dad passed away, my dad was really sick for like 2 months before he passed. He had
Mm,
colon cancer,
mm,
and he was diagnosed stage 4. And I needed, like, my mind was not good when he
yeah.
was really sick for those last 2 months. So I talked to my doctor and talked to my boss, and I was able to get 3 months off. And
Wow.
I got short-term disability the entire time.
Wow.
And we were living in a smaller apartment at the time with our rent literally half the rent that we pay now. So
Oh,
we were able to make bills work on short-term disability.
right.
My wife is on disability, permanent disability for MS.
Oh,
So
wow.
they don't work, and they do recovery dharma.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I have a friend who does that.
And literally just got done a meeting probably 10 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
She does 3 on Sundays.
Oh, cool.
So 2 during the week, and then 3 on Sundays, and 2 on Saturdays. And, has a great, they don't call them sponsors, they call them
Yeah.
mentors. And,
Okay.
work in a great program, and we respect
Right.
each other's programs. Like,
Absolutely.
step work and NA or AA isn't for her, and that's not for me. And then,
Right.
we both can just like respect each other's program and not have to like step on any toes.
Yeah, that's huge, like with having a relationship with someone in recovery, because, like my husband's in recovery, and it's sometimes it's hard. We do the same thing. Like, we don't, he also works a program of AA, and we don't really like go to meetings together. Maybe like every once in a while we'll go to a meeting together, and we talk a lot about recovery together because we're both in recovery. Our lives like revolve around it. But we try to stay out of each other's recovery program. And there's times I want to be like, oh, maybe you should go to a meeting, or you need to work on step 6. But it's not my program, and it's not my place. So that's
Yeah,
definitely relatable for us.
that's good.
But it's cool you have that, that mutual respect.
Yeah, I'm glad you have it too, though, because it's an important thing to have in a relationship.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And like you were talking about, wanting to or like starting to manipulate your doctor. And I think like for me, doing the steps of AA just reminds me so much how, you know, drugs and alcohol are like but a symptom of my problem. You know, I can take away the drugs and alcohol, you know, but I'm still, you know, my first instinct is to lie to you. I'll manipulate you. You know, I'm dishonest. I'm selfish, you know, and it really helps to, it doesn't clear those things right away, you know, but it makes me aware of them, you know, and then gives me the tools to, you know, not be like that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's really such an amazing program. But I personally feel like if you're doing anything recovery related to like better yourself, you know, it's such a gift.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Amber. I really appreciate you coming on and talking.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been really cool.
And congrats again on 2 years. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you so much.
You know,
I
keep it
appreciate
going.
it. Yeah.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.